10 years of Neville and Lewis.
Gary, thanks for your time today. 10 years in since we started working together. First project was a building in Castlefield, not Mill. We bought a small building, did a full refurbishment on it. Do you want to talk us through how it all started?
Yeah, I mean, my property journey in Manchester began with, I developed during my football career up in Bolton, 4 or 5 farms, probably about 20 to 30 properties, some quite big ones. 12,000 square foot barn conversion, a 22,000 square foot one, an 8,000 square foot one, and then a series of between sort of 2 and 5,000 square foot conversions of amazing properties, historic buildings, all in conservation areas, and just fell in love with renovation, development, property, construction. But then just recognised that one, I was coming to the end of my football career and I could be more open about my love for development and property. And secondly, I felt as though I was quite narrow in my thinking up in Bolton, and that all my eggs were in one basket. And I just looked at Manchester, and obviously it was that point where it was just coming out of the recession still, really, in terms of people's mindsets. And I just looked at buildings, obviously understanding what it cost to build stuff in Bolton. And my brother-in-law has a really sort of quite sobering saying about property.
You couldn't build it for that.
You couldn't build it for that.
I remember.
And it's a really good point to make sometimes, that we went to obviously Jordan Street, saw that red brick building, 4 stories, 650 grand. 650. And I thought, no, that can't be right. I can't buy that for 650 grand. That's less than £100 a square foot. And I loved it. And I thought, I'll have that. And then obviously in respect of choosing an agent, I always remember I went and had a meeting with a lot of the major developers in Manchester around the time to learn, to mentor me, to teach me. Because you sometimes, when you're stepping out of Bolton where you've developed and you're stepping into Manchester city centre, it's a different world. You know it's bigger, you know that you sort of, if once you start buying buildings and doing things, you're part of a sort of development community, a property community, you obviously have to have relationships. And I went and saw all the major developers, a lot of them have been very good to me, and the one meeting that I've ever had with Mike Ingle, he mentioned you, and said, look, you're a small boutique consultancy, but you get things done, you've got that bit between your teeth. And me, with my background of sort of that, coming through at United, I didn't really want I didn't like the idea of a sort of a massive agency. I wanted someone to go and sort of find properties for me that were under the radar, that I could trust. And so I obviously had set that meeting up with yourself. I think at the time you had 3 different aspects to your building, didn't you? To your company, sorry. You had obviously the surveying side, which Dominic was running. You had the property side, which you were managing, and then you had a finance side or a investment side, yeah. So I remember the first meeting in our office in Manchester. We'd always had an office in Manchester, our development and management and property consultancy, and just thought, right, if that's 650 for 8,000 square foot, and I know what I'm building out in Bolton and what I'm buying out in Bolton, and I know that Manchester, I've got great faith in this city, I know it's going to grow. I just thought, right, I need to go and buy buildings.
That was your first commercial building?
Yeah, first commercial building, 650,000, 8,000 square foot.
But you did do a mini mixed use scheme in there?
Yeah, I wanted, the top floor was stunning. It had the old wooden beams, absolutely outstanding, and I wanted to make that into an apartment that I could use when I came to Manchester. And then the 3 floors below, I put basically our businesses in. And I've never been able to get my head around, and maybe I need to change my mindset, I've never been able to get my head around paying rent. So I've always had this feeling that I need to own the building that my offices are in, just because I'm in there anyway. So that's followed through obviously with some of the later purchases that we've had.
And quite quickly after we did the first one, we found this place.
Yeah.
And if we pinched the first one,
yeah,
this was a very low capital value at the time, but equally it was in a time when no one was buying. The recession was still there. Finance was very difficult.
We bought this off the bank, didn't we?
Yeah, directly.
I mean, this had about 20 bidders, but I always remember you saying to me that, I said, what will it take to get it? I love the building. I mean, I adore it. It's like, wow. And there was just no faith. When I think back now to the lack of faith in the property market at that time.
Sentiment is really, really
And bids
important.
were coming in at around 1.5 million, and I was like, what, for all this? And again, my brother-in-law comes along, has a look at it and goes, God, this would cost you about 50 million to build. He said, actually, I think with this one, he said, you couldn't even build this nowadays. And you said, we'll get it. And I went, and that's when I actually, to be fair, started to trust that because you've always been honest with me, I don't think you'll get this. I think you'll get this one. You've no chance on this. And you've always told me pretty quickly straight away, whether I've got a chance or not. And if there's a lot of sort of what would be serious people bidding, the likelihood is you're not going to get it. I mean, I've got some money, but I've not got the level of money that other property developers in Manchester have got and other building owners in Manchester have got. So with this one, I just thought, right, I'm going for it. We're going for it. And this was the second building we bought, and the old restaurant, Stocks restaurant, was still in here. Restaurant that I'd been to so many times over the years. It was a brilliant restaurant. Started to just fade a little bit at the end. And obviously the lease ran out on it and they moved out and it became vacant.
And when you're looking at these buildings, there's a bit of a common theme really in terms of the style of them in the city. What do you look for? What makes a building good for you?
If I'm owning them personally, usually freehold.
Yeah.
I don't know, psychologically I know that like 250-year leases are sort of deemed sort of institutionally sort of safe, and 999 even obviously. I just feel freehold, just like a magic word, just always has been really, and this was freehold and obviously so was Jordan Street. In Manchester I go from, and it's not because I'm a snob, I've always been like this, from Hilton to, or just Castlefield, other side of the Hilton there, where Deansgate Locks is, to Harvey Nichols, to top of King Street where Rosso is, and then obviously now to Spinning Fields at the bottom. That was almost like, if you put a circle round there in a radius, that's where I always wanted to be. And you might be 100 yards out of it or 50 yards out of it, and there might even be deals that I would do in the future now because of Manchester's growth. But that was really important to me at the time, that I thought if there's ever going to be a recession again, we'd just come out of the recession, everyone had been burnt, property had stopped, construction had stopped, and I always felt as though it was really important to sort of buy in the right location. So St Michael's, here, Jordan Street, they're all very central within the sort of core as I would describe it.
But you carried on going and you carried on buying cleverly, I think, in really good locations, but also buildings which were quite aesthetically pleasing. The architecture was quite strong on all of them.
That's where I let myself down with the pub on St Michael's really, and the old police station at the front. When people said, oh, he just wants to build modern towers, I thought, hang on a minute, I've renovated 20 like historic farms up in Bolton, 2 listed buildings. I've got 6 listed buildings, I think, in Manchester. This is a listed building, St Andrews is a listed building, we'll come on to talk about that, and then the 4 on St John Street. I absolutely adore old buildings and renovating them. So I let myself down there with the approach and how I went about it, and that was a big life lesson as well as a property lesson. But you're right, I want a building with character, in a good location. I want a building that's architecturally fantastic, that looks good. I'm into design, I'm into architecture, I'm into buildings, I'm into interior, I'm into all those things. And so this one, I had this vision for a members club at the beginning, if you remember. That was why I wanted this building. Been to London quite a lot, but then recognised that it wasn't really feasible at the time in Manchester, may not even be now, but that's what I wanted to do with it, and then turned it into a boutique hotel. There's more resilience with rooms. Yeah,
and I think that you've had a number of mini visions which have progressed the city. Hotels, best in class hotel, what you're doing at St Michael's, which we'll come on to. But actually the project on St John's, I think, is, in terms of visionary, that's taking some rundown offices or physios, doctors, surgeries, and actually going for creating a new niche market. And I thought that although piecing those buildings together was not easy, took a lot of years, tricky negotiations, but just tell us what you've sort of created down there, because I think it's very special.
Yeah, it took, I mean, this was just something that, obviously when you travel to London beyond football and you see these Georgian townhouses, and then you think Manchester's really only got 1 or 2 streets that have these types of properties. And I got to know Philip Ems, who was a physio, who was in 19 St John Street.
Everyone wanted it.
And everyone wanted 19 St John Street, but I got to know him really well, and I'd actually gone there for so many treatments down the years as a football player, from skin related issues to my groin to other issues, because we all used to basically, before the sort of private hospitals opened, that's where we'd go for our sort of treatments as players. Jimmy McGregor, our old physio from sort of like the 80s and 90s, when I first joined United, his private practice was based in St John Street. So I've been going in these houses for sort of so long and thought, these are amazing houses, they're amazing buildings. And I got to know Philip Ems and did a deal with Philip, I think 2011-12, but then pulled out on him because of just the market. I felt as though I was paying too much, and in the end ended up paying a lot more to him about 4 or 5 years later. But then recognised that this was 50 yards off Deansgate and it was right where I wanted to be. I wanted to move back into Manchester. I'd lived in number 1 Deansgate from 27 to 31 as a football player and loved it. Not many people know I lived in Manchester, and obviously later on I've told them, but I literally lived in number 1 Deansgate in the Crosby Homes, which was the first, I think you could argue, after Century Buildings, premier apartment block in Manchester, and thought, but I want my own front door. I want to be able to sort of just go in, and just fell in love with, and literally just always then, every year, just got to know Bernard next door, got to know everybody on the street basically, and just, you know, through friendship and through relationship, got those deals off market. With you, obviously, contacting.
Well,
them,
they trusted you, didn't they?
They trusted me to do the deal properly, and once I said I was going to do it with them, you know, I did it, and I paid them the market rate for it. It wasn't as if I was sort of like saying to them, "I'll chip you" or anything. I don't do that. So yeah, I think we just did 4 deals.
But how good are these buildings now?
I mean, I love them. No one had faith in these buildings. My brother-in-law's built with me for 15 years, 20 years, and he said, "What are you doing?" My wife, I remember my kids coming in and saying, when we saw 19 for the first time, it was a mess, and saying, "I'm not going anywhere near this place." Like, it just didn't look. And now, when we see the street, I love the street. I absolutely love the street. It's amazing.
Well, there's lots and lots of new blocks going up and have been going up. Yeah. But if someone wants to rent a nice house or a top-of-the-range house in Manchester, then this is...
And Manchester needs tens and tens and hundreds of thousands of homes, because it's a brand new city really in the last 20 years in terms of living. So we need those apartment blocks. We need to make sure that we build high and we build with quality and with amenity. But we also need different types of, you know, houses. And I think there is real opportunities in Manchester's old buildings to be able to create homes, and that's happening, and it's happened over the last 10, 15 years. It's been happening with, think what Tom has done with Urban Splash, just out of town or in town. I mean, it's exceptional what he's done. So there's others that have done brilliant jobs in this area.
Where do you think you got your sort of vision for property? That mini resi project, making a mini market within a big city, does take vision. It takes balls. Is that anything you've done in the past?
It was my first project, 22 years of age, a 12,000 square foot barn conversion. I didn't manage it myself. We had a budget of 500,000 to do it up, and it cost 1.1 million. And it was the scariest moment in my life. I was a footballer at the time. I was earning good money, but nothing like the amount of money that could support this. And the mistakes I made, making changes, overspending, overspeccing, sitting in every design team meeting, being almost in some ways too close to it, being emotional about it. And I always think if you build your own house, that's probably one of the most difficult projects you can ever build, your own house, because it's got emotion attached to it. And when emotion gets attached to property and decision making, you end up overspending because you want an extra kitchen, or you want an extra bathroom, or you want an extra light, or you want a bit more spec on something else on a floor, because you always see something that's nicer than what you've allowed for in an Excel spreadsheet at the start of a project. And through that, just fell in love, absolutely fell in love with it, and thought, I need to do this again. Addictive. And through that, set up my own contracting firm, small contracting firm. Those lads are still building for us now in Manchester. We had the project management, development management, and M&E consultancy. So literally, we're sort of starting to build a team of people who could deliver them, but sat in every design team meeting and was like a sponge on every aspect of building regulations, Part L if it was into M&E, sustainability, interiors, layouts, obsessive with layouts, making sure that if a layout looks too complicated, forget about it. I want layouts that look quite simple, that you can read straight away. Just all those things that I picked up and just learned on the job really over 10, 15 years, to a point whereby now I'd say probably, other than the media stuff that I do in football, it's probably the area that I have most knowledge about and feel most passionate about. Not many people know that, probably.
Not until they've been in a design meeting with you. But the next one was St Andrews.
Yeah.
So again, you put a pin in the middle of Manchester, you'd probably go straight through the roof of this building.
Yeah, and I said, I'd said to you probably 2 or 3 years before, I want a building on Albert Square. Because I work on the theory that I have massive belief in this city, and there are only 10 or 15 buildings that face onto Albert Square, and I wanted one of them. And I've got the smallest one probably. You may say if there's one that's smaller, there might be one over on the other side. But if you think of Piccolino's, from Piccolino's round to mine at St Andrews, there's probably only 10 buildings, 12 buildings that face directly into the square. We've been looking at a construction site for the
square, it's going to be worth it though.
It will be worth it, it's going to look exceptional.
Yeah.
But I just thought, right, if this is going to be sort of like as exceptional as I think it will be, the town hall redevelopment, if this is the middle of what I believe to be the second city in this country, if this is going to see the growth that I think it's going to see, if this is going to be what I believe Manchester is going to be, I want a building in this location. And you basically found a building that was available off the end of St Andrews. And I met someone in London actually about 3 days ago. We've got an idea for that building.
Like your first idea?
Yeah, to try and do something a bit quirky. He took me into a restaurant sort of club in London, and it was amazing. It was small floor plate.
Would it work in Manchester?
I don't know, to be honest with you. We're going to try things, aren't we? You know, so I just, that one for me was just, again, we need an office. We want it on Albert Square. You wait 2 or 3 years, you've got to be really patient. And if you want something, you've got to really sort of start to get to know building owners and get to understand them and sort of do deals away from the sort of, if you like, for sale signs.
To be fair, you've got a great team that work with you and were in that building. And I remember visiting you once, way before all this new ways of working came out. And I was thinking, he's got like a breakout presentation.
Breakfast bar
space.
Lounge.
That's brave, not sectioned off. Then you go upstairs and it was like a cafe environment before that all became into fashion. So
I said this 10 years ago, it's not prison going to work. You shouldn't have to sit in the same seat every day looking at the same sort of screen and have like a metre by a metre. I know things have changed since COVID, but we created basically a cafe environment, breakfast bar, lounge, dining table, different little places where people can work, so that actually every single day when you come in, you feel, and this was like, 7 or 8 years ago, 9 years ago, it certainly wasn't,
it was way before its time.
It was way before, flexibility. I just thought we have to make it an environment where people want to come into the office, and that's why we've not had any problems getting people back into the office post pandemic, because they always wanted to come into the office anyway because it's a good environment, and they can still have a day off, 2 days off, or 3 days off if they want, but they just like coming in because it's a good environment to be in. So that building was, I love that building. I genuinely love that building. It's just fantastic.
You'll never find another.
I sometimes, on that one, it's like, I sometimes stand in front of the library and look at it and think, wow, because its most beautiful aspect is when you stand at the library and look at the side of it.
Yeah.
You know, if you actually look at it from the front with the 2 doors, the arches, it looks nice, but obviously you see the grandeur of the rest of the sort of the rest of the buildings in that row. But I think if you stand on the library side and just look, it is absolutely gorgeous. And building buildings like that, you know, we have to look after them buildings.
And we did a couple of leasing projects with one of your other interests in UA92, which was interesting. That's just expanded. We've just finished the Baskerville House. New lease and also the fit out there. But I'm sure it's fair to say that your biggest ever project of your life probably is St Michael's, now phases 1 and 2. Just how much determination did that need to get to where you are? Because that a lot of people have threw the towel in, I think.
There was a point, I think, where I thought, is this just too difficult? Is this just the market, the world telling me that?
I mean, did you understand funding and all that sort of stuff and how?
I don't like asking for money. But
you'd have deep pockets to build.
Yeah, but I got to the point whereby I couldn't put my own money in anymore to sort of do it. So you got to go out and obviously find partners. So I'm not comfortable sort of going asking for money, but the reality of it is to build big projects, you needed it. What we were trying to do initially was, when I look back now, was beyond ambitious. It was monumental. We were trying to build the whole